On a cold November morning in 2011, 30-year-old Julia Beryukova woke up to find that her 2-year-old son Sky had fallen ill during the night. Worried, she decided she needed to bring him to the hospital to have him checked. Julia decided to bring her son to Overlake Medical Center in Bellevue, Washington, which was only a 12-minute drive away from her apartment. She loaded her 4-year-old daughter, Mail, and Sky into her car to go to the hospital. Roughly 2.2 miles into the trip, Julia ran out of gas. Unfortunately, she also realized that she left her phone, wallet, and purse at home, so she had no way to call for help. She decided to start walking until she came to a gas station. Julia decided to bring Mail with her and left Sky asleep in the back seat, strapped snugly in his car seat, while the doors were unlocked. A Chevron gas station was located just a mile down the road, but it took Julia and Mail about an hour to get there. Despite the fact Julia was in a residential area, she did not knock on anyone's doors to ask for assistance. When Julia and Mail arrived at the gas station, they used the phone there to contact her friend. The friend picked them up and brought them back to Julia's car, still without any gas. By this time, an hour and a half had passed since Julia and Mail left Sky, but when they returned to the car, Sky was gone. After Julia discovered that her 2-year-old son was missing, she called 911 on her friend's phone. Solomon Metalwala, the children's father and Julia's ex-husband, was contacted sometime after 11 a.m. Officers searched a 20-block radius around Julia's parked car but found no trace of Sky. Solomon has remained very active in the search for his son, while Julia refused to take a polygraph test and requested a lawyer early on in the investigation. That was the last time she spoke to the police about her missing 2-year-old, casting a lot of speculation and attention her way. The Bellevue Police Department spent more than $2 million, more than 14,000 man-hours, and followed up on over 2,500 leads to find Sky. But what happened to Sky Metalwala still remains a mystery. What happened to the sweet 2-year-old boy remains unknown today. Welcome to another episode of Crimson Sin with Tamsin Leigh. I am your host, Tamsin Leigh. Full show notes and sources can be found in the description. Julia Beryukova and Solomon Metalwala are both immigrants to the United States. Julia is a native of Ukraine, born in Soviet Russia on March 10, 1981, and immigrated to Washington State with her mother in 1993. Solomon was born on April 15, 1975, and is a Pakistani immigrant. In court documents, Julia claimed she suffered through most of her childhood in Russia. She also claimed that her parents were very strict and allegedly physically abused her. It was also stated that Julia had undergone a series of electroconvulsive treatment therapies in her youth. These treatments were not to help with mental illness. Instead, they were a means to correct her behavior. She continued to state that she experienced regular physical discipline and was frequently told she was wrong. From her statements regarding her childhood, it is apparent that there is lasting trauma. Julia met Solomon in 1997 at a gas station. He was 21 when she was only 15 years old. She was a sophomore in high school while Solomon was running King Street Cafe, now known as King Street Bar and Oven, which his parents owned. While there was an age difference and he could technically get into serious trouble, it did not stop him from inviting Julia to a weekend party where the two became a couple almost instantly. While still attending high school, Julia also worked as a waitress at King Street Cafe. In 1999, 17-year-old Julia graduated from high school and became a naturalized U.S. citizen. She and Solomon purchased their first home together in one of the more affluent suburbs of Washington called Bellevue. They were a successful young couple who led an active lifestyle. The two enjoyed hiking, jogging, and doing yoga together. However, appearances can be deceiving. Julia would claim that Solomon was controlling. She went on to admit that she had become emotionally dependent on him, which led to her isolating herself from friends and family. The couple was also known to fight a lot. On one such occasion, not long after they purchased their first home, Julia and Solomon were in a loud, heated dispute while at a gas station. The pair caused such a disturbance that law enforcement came to the scene. On this particular occasion, nothing came of the dispute. While the pair would consistently argue, they were committed to each other and refused to let their differences tear them apart. In February 2003, Solomon and Julia married, holding a small ceremony in his mother's kitchen. According to reports, Julia did not tell her family about her marriage to Solomon for 7 years. She later claimed she did not want to marry him, but his family gave her an ultimatum: marry him, or he would be deported to Pakistan. However, Julia never disclosed why Solomon would have been facing deportation. 2 years into their marriage, the relationship between Solomon and Julia was beginning to deteriorate. One of the differences that seemed to be a major issue was Solomon's religion. He was raised Muslim. In 2005, he decided to convert to Christianity to help make the marriage work. His parents, who still practiced the Muslim faith, were not happy with his decision. Their disapproval over the matter grew when Solomon and Julia began attending a church in Kirkland. His parents would further blame Julia for their son's decision, which ultimately caused more friction in their marriage. However, their problems wouldn't end there. During the same year, another deli opened across the street from King Street Cafe, which took revenue from their shop and led the couple into financial hardship. In December 2006, Solomon and Julia welcomed their first child, a daughter named Metalwala. Not long after the baby's birth, Julia was diagnosed with obsessive-compulsive disorder. The mental illness is characterized by a pattern of unwanted thoughts or fears that lead to obsession and repetitive behaviors, or rituals. By 2008, Julia discovered she was pregnant with the couple's second child. While pregnant, her psychiatrist prescribed her antidepressants, but she did not take them because she felt she didn't need them. The news of her pregnancy came at a time when the couple's financial hardship worsened as their business declined more. Their financial burden was especially worsened by the 2008 recession. Even with money troubles, Solomon and Julia decided they needed a bigger home to accommodate their growing family. Moving out of their Bellevue condominium, the family moved into a home in the South Rose Hill neighborhood of Kirkland, a home that cost $860,000. Even with the move, the couple was still responsible for the mortgage payments on their Bellevue condominium. It did not take long for the family to accrue a lot of debt from this decision. With their financial status taking a nosedive, allegedly Solomon kept their debt a secret from Julia. She would later tell the court that she did not learn how severe their financial issues were until they were 6 months behind on payments, and described this incident as being the tipping point of their marriage. Sky Elijah Metalwala was born on September 6, 2009. Less than 2 months later, a very strange occurrence happened where Julia and Solomon found themselves in trouble with authorities. While Solomon and Julia went shopping inside a Target store, they left their less than 2-month-old son, Sky, in their Cadillac Escalade, where temperatures reached 27 degrees Fahrenheit. The couple told the police they were inside for only 20 minutes. However, using video surveillance from Target, authorities found that the couple was actually in the store for 55 minutes. Julia and Solomon were charged with leaving a child unattended in a motor vehicle and were required to take parenting classes to have the charges against them dropped. Reflecting on this incident, it is a strange precursor of Sky's disappearance. However, the couple continued to experience financial hardships as they could not pay their bills, and lenders started to foreclose on their 2 properties. The family moved back into their Bellevue condominium as they risked losing both homes. Julia's mental illness intensified as she was now caring for 2 children, experiencing financial trouble, dealing with the stress of losing her home, and amid a failing marriage. Her OCD manifested into an intense obsession with cleaning, where she would spend 6 to 7 hours a day cleaning the home. This action made it so she could not work. She would clean the same areas over and over again until she was satisfied with the results. Julia frequently vacuumed in perfectly straight lines at all hours of the day and night. This caused the family to receive 3 noise complaints from their manager at their complex because she was vacuuming late at night. On the 3rd complaint, the Metalwalas were charged a $300 fee. Her OCD grew even more as she no longer wanted to sleep in her bed, so she would avoid dirtying the sheets. Julia also stopped allowing food in the home to avoid crumbs. This obsession made it to where the family had to eat outside the home. As a result, the children were neglected and missed meals. Before long, Julia completely stopped leaving the house. Child Protection Services visited the Metalwala household at least 6 times from 2009 to 2010. The problems she was experiencing from her unchecked mental illness made it so that Solomon would have to check and care for the children when he returned home from work. He stated, "I am not exaggerating when I state under oath that Julia cared more about cleaning a countertop than she did about feeding our daughter." The child was ignored and it became a matter of great concern. Julia's mother, Nadia Beryukova, believed Solomon and stated in court documents that she had told her daughter, "Neither your husband nor I would like for you to live with us at your current conditions. All of us, your children included, are suffering from your abuse." In 2010, Julia would be committed to a mental health facility 3 times. Her first hospitalization came earlier in the year when Julia told Solomon she dreamt of killing their children. She had also told her husband that she had visions of strangling Sky. Solomon and Julia were separated in March 2010. He waited to file for a divorce when she came home from the hospital in June. Needless to say, Julia did not take the news very well, as she started sending Solomon a barrage of text messages threatening to commit suicide. In one such message, she wrote, "Please, please, I'm begging you with my whole heart, help me find a peaceful way to die. I cannot live another day and cause you, Mail, and Sky any more suffering. I'm dead inside anyway, and have been dead for a long time. You will not miss me at all, and Mail and Sky have the best daddy in the world, so I know they will be okay." When Solomon received these messages, he knew that Julia was home alone with 6-month-old Sky. Concerned, he called the Bellevue police to check on his son's welfare. Julia admitted to authorities she was suicidal and was involuntarily committed to 2 mental health facilities. However, she had told hospital staff that she only made these suicidal threats to get Solomon's attention. After finishing her 2nd stay, Julia requested Solomon and his brother take her to the University of Washington Medical Center because she felt she was not receiving the care she needed, and her condition was not being taken seriously at the other facilities. At the third facility, Julia was administered a Global Assessment of Functioning, or GAF, which is a scale used to determine the severity of a mental illness. Upon taking the first GAF, Julia received a score of 15, which suggests that there is some danger of hurting themselves or others, that the person could occasionally fail to maintain minimal personal hygiene, or that there is a gross impairment in communication. Before she was released from this facility, she was given the test again and received a 40, which shows she made some improvement. However, the score still suggests there are some problems, ranging from some impairment in testing or communication, or major impairments in areas such as work or school, family relations, judgment, thinking, or mood. While Julia was receiving treatment, the lender foreclosed on the Metalwala's condominium. Solomon and the children moved in with his parents in Kirkland. Because the couple were separated and Solomon had already filed for divorce, this meant that when Julia was released, she would be on her own. The divorce was also anything but amicable, as Julia and Solomon disagreed about the guidelines of their divorce. One of the more noteworthy claims from the divorce is when Julia claimed Solomon abused her and feared for her life. He dismissed these allegations, claiming they were false, and stated that Julia's mental health problems made her unstable and unable to adequately care for their children. There were numerous times throughout the divorce proceedings that both parties had orders of protection against each other. They would go back and forth accusing the other of being physically and emotionally abusive toward the children. However, these claims were never found to be true. Julia would further make a very serious allegation against Solomon when she claimed he sexually abused their daughter. CPS ruled this claim unfounded, and during the investigation, he was prohibited from seeing both children for almost a year. In September 2010, Julia was granted full custody of both children, and Solomon had no visitation rights. She had also forbidden him from seeing the kids, but Solomon kept fighting in court. Julia wanted the proceedings to end and offered to forego alimony and child support if Solomon would allow her to move to Arizona with the kids. He refused this offer as he just wanted to be part of his children's lives. In November 2011, the court ordered the couple to attend mediation to resolve their issues. It was later found out that Julia left both her children at home alone during this mediation session. And it was something she did often, and at times for up to 11 hours. Eventually, Solomon and Julia would agree that she would maintain full custody of the children, and Solomon would receive full visitation. But Julia did not like this arrangement. And on November 3rd, 2011, she called her lawyer claiming she felt pressured into the agreement. This caused Solomon's visitation to be voided. It was only 3 days later that Sky was gone. Of course, due to the custody dispute, the parents became prime suspects in the investigation, and police had their eye on Julia because her story did not make sense. Julia claimed her car needed gas. However, authorities inspected the vehicle. It still had 2.2 gallons of gas, which was more than enough to reach the hospital. There also wasn't anything mechanically wrong with the vehicle to prevent her from making it to her destination. Also peculiar was that Julia told police she searched for help, but she did not knock on any doors of any of the homes nearby. Canine units were involved in the search for Sky, and none of them picked up his scent anywhere outside the vehicle. Another curious point in the investigation was that Sky had not been seen by anyone besides Julia and Mail for 2 weeks, leading up to his disappearance. Those who lived in the apartment building where Julia resided reported hardly seeing Julia or her children. The residents claimed it was normal for Julia to come and go while leaving both children unattended in her apartment. But the last time anyone saw Sky was during a doctor's appointment 8 months before the incident. Everyone also claimed that it was apparent Male was Julia's favorite child. After all, she didn't leave her alone in the vehicle, nor did she leave her with Sky that day. This sentiment was furthered by the fact that Julia posted far more photos of her and Male on Facebook than of her and Sky. Lastly, Solomon took a polygraph test to clear himself as a suspect. However, Julia refused to take one. Veronica Freitas, Julia's lawyer, stated her decision not to take the polygraph test was due to her mental instability at the time, and that the tests are notoriously unreliable. There are many theories surrounding Sky's disappearance. One such theory includes an episode of NBC's Law and Order Special Victims Unit. The episode entitled Missing Pieces from Season 13, Episode 5 premiered 2 weeks earlier and reran in the Seattle area the night before Sky's disappearance. In the episode, a young couple claimed their son was abducted when their parked car was stolen on Halloween. As the story progressed, it was discovered that they had buried their son after he died from sudden infant death syndrome and fabricated the car theft story as a cover-up. It bears striking similarities to Sky's disappearance, and the theory that this episode may have inspired his disappearance was furthered by Solomon's allegations that Law and Order was one of Julia's favorite TV shows. As Sky's disappearance is still an ongoing case, the timing of the episode and its inspiration is merely speculation and at this time coincidental. Another theory suggests that Sky was killed days before his alleged disappearance. As investigators dug deeper into Sky's disappearance, they discovered that none of Sky's family members had seen him for several weeks before he disappeared. The only person known to have seen him was Julia. As no one had seen the child for weeks, this brings about the possibility that Sky died or was killed before his disappearance. The next theory suggests that Sky is alive and well. Julia Biryukova's estranged father visited Washington from Ukraine in April 2011. Many speculate that Sky may have gone back to Ukraine with her father. This would probably be the most hoped for outcome from this case. Even after Sky's disappearance, there were many hardships that Solomon and Julia would experience. The Washington State Department of Social and Health Services removed Male from Julia's home and placed her in foster care. Solomon was allowed visitation twice a week while he fought in court for full custody of his daughter. Eventually, he was awarded full custody. In January 2012, Solomon and Julia's divorce was finalized. Not long after the divorce was finalized, Julia created a profile on a dating website called seekingarrangements.com. On her dating profile, she stated she was seeking out sugar daddies, willing to support her financially as part of a relationship, and requested $3,000 to $5,000 in cash per month. However, the man she connected with was the polar opposite of what she was seeking. Alan Morgan was a regular methamphetamine user, alcoholic, and was periodically homeless. He is a convicted felon with a lengthy rap sheet that includes several CPS referrals in Florida for cruelty against a child from a prior relationship, domestic violence, assault, violence against police officers, battery, and chemical dependency. Regardless of these serious flaws, Julia appears to have fallen in love with him. By December 2014, Julia and Alan married. Within that very same month, she reported to Redmond police that Alan allegedly assaulted her and was granted a no-contact order. However, she continued to visit her husband in jail. While he was in jail, she gave birth to her third child, Elijah James Morgan, on July 10th, 2015. But Julia would claim she did not know who the father of her child was. I do not find it odd that Alan was named as the father on the birth certificate, while others do find it strange that she would name him as the father even though she does not know who the father actually is. But almost immediately after giving birth, Julia was declared an unfit parent by DHSH and removed the infant from her care, naming Julia's mother as Elijah's legal caregiver, despite both Julia and her son already living with her mother. Still, the living arrangements were considered stable enough to keep the courts satisfied. But trouble continually followed Julia from her poor choices. In February 2019, Julia testified in court against Alan for the domestic violence case. During the court proceedings, she claimed Alan violated the no-contact order that was in place. It is true that Alan called Julia from jail, but she called him more than 70 times and visited him under an alias on several occasions. On October 15th, 2019, Alan was released and was court-ordered to attend drug and alcohol treatment. Alan left treatment early on November 5th, resulting in a warrant for his arrest. That same year, Julia was arrested for shoplifting. Alan later argued in court that he and Julia's child would be better suited in foster care because it would provide a neutral environment for him to become reacquainted with his son. As Elijah was in the legal care of his grandmother, you can imagine that with Julia living in the home and having supposed supervised interactions with her son, she still had a lot of say in the child's life, most likely. There really isn't any way that these guidelines could have been met while both were living under the same roof. Eventually, their son was placed into foster care and Julia was no longer permitted to live with her mother. Julia filed a motion to reconsider the court's opinion on February 20th, 2024, but the motion was denied. Still, after all of this, there haven't been any leads and no input on Sky's whereabouts from Julia. Sky Metalwala will be 15 years old this year and is still missing. The case remains open and unsolved. If anyone has information on the case of missing Sky Metalwala, contact the Bellevue Police Department at 425-577-5656 or email pdtipline@bellevuewa.gov. So what did you think of today's case? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Don't forget to like and follow for more. Thank you for listening and your support. Stay safe and I will see you for the next episode. Bye.